Yeah, you're welcome to Biotics channel. It's our online platform where we reflect on bioethical issues and challenges as they affect humanity and society in general. Today we are going to listen to the erudite and cerebral Professor Douglas Anele, Professor of Philosophy in the University of Lagos, Nigeria. Oh, as you can see, you're already wearing the Philosopher-King. And see, this
Yes,
is a
so
Platonic that okay, things will not be better, things will not be unless either kings become philosophers or philosophers become kings. Anyway, so can you explain this concept and how it can be applied in practical life matters, in politics, in general life issues, and in societal organization?
yeah, thank you very much for this good opportunity to explain this intriguing concept or expression, Philosopher-King. Um, According to historians of philosophy, this expression was first formulated by Plato, one of the greatest ancient Greek philosophers. Plato was really interested in the political events and situation in his home country, Greece. And he actually wanted to present a blueprint as to how the society can be governed in such a way that the potentials of the different classes in the community can be maximized. In his famous book, The Republic, Plato said that the world will know no peace until by the act of providence, philosophers become kings or kings become philosophers. If you examine this claim from the surface, one might be deceived into thinking that, oh, it is only when you study philosophy that you can be a good and effective leader. And if you look at Plato's conception of the ideal society, well, Plato was an idealist, and he believes that the ideal society can exist in this world as a copy of the ideal society in the world of ideas or the world of forms. So when you talk about philosopher kings, what Plato meant is this. Plato is talking about the best in the society in terms of intellectual, moral, and spiritual endowments. Recall that Plato divided members of the society into three classes. You have the guardian class, you have the auxiliaries or the soldiers, then you have the generality of the people. Now, Plato drew a parallel between the society and the human soul, which means that as you have three classes of members of a political community, you also have a tripartite division of the human soul. You have the rational part represented by the guardian class. You have the spirited part, the part that is aligned with courage. And you talk about the soldiers, the auxiliaries. And then you have what he called the appetitive part, which represents the emotions, which also represents the general mass of the people. So Plato drew a parallel between the human soul and the classification of members of a community. And Plato made it clear that because politics is a fundamental human activity that plays a decisive role in the community, in the public environment, that the best must be saddled with leadership. For Plato, the leadership of any political community must be entrusted in the hands of the best. And when Plato talks about the best, as I hinted before, he wasn't talking about the richest or the most politically connected or the most powerful in terms of strength. No. Plato is talking about men and women imbued with the best of intellectual, moral, and spiritual qualities that can provide effective leadership for the community. And Plato insists that justice in a political community, justice in the polis, what the Greeks call the polis, is achieved when each division, each component of the community focuses on the job for which it is best suited. Because Plato was a firm believer in the division of labor. And he believed that those who are supposed to be the auxiliary, the soldiers, or the masses, have no business encroaching in the functions of the guardians, who, according to him, are the philosopher-king. They are the ones who have the best intuition of what obtains in the ideal world, in the world of forms, and therefore they have the capacity to translate those ideals in the political community. So you can see that what Plato advocated in terms of the leadership of the political community is what nations are practicing to a larger or lesser extent. And one can argue that the more nations approach the ideal set forth through the concept of philosopher-king by Plato, the greater you will notice social and political and economic development in the community. And the further away a country is from the Platonic ideal, the further away from the attainment of progress and development in the community. So what Plato is saying is that in every community, those who have the best qualities should be the ones saddled with the responsibility of leadership. But unfortunately, in most African countries, and if we beam our searchlight on Nigeria, you will see that what we have had more or less consistently is a negation of the Platonic ideal. We don't have the best intellectually, morally, and spiritually at the helms of affairs. As a matter of fact, it appears that Nigeria is recycling the worst, what you might call the third 11 in leadership position. And therefore, we could see the outcome. Nigeria would take 5 steps forward and 7 steps backward, which means that any community that want to experience sustainable development and progress must strive toward the Platonic ideal. And if you even extrapolate this concept of philosopher-king to the individual, remember that Plato emphasizes the intellectual, the rational qualities. And for Plato, when he talks about intellectual qualities for leadership, he's not merely talking about book knowledge. No. Plato believes that just as his master Socrates taught that virtue is knowledge, you cannot be classified as a knowledgeable person if you are bereft of fundamental virtues. So that for Plato, knowledge and virtue are like Siamese twins that are inseparable. So, in the life of a person, Plato will argue that the rational part should be like a kind of guide, the supervisor, so that just as I will have at the political level the guardians being in charge of political leadership, for the individual, the rational part should be in charge, should be the guide about how the individual lives his or her life. Which means that for Plato, a rational living implies a life lived according to the dictates of the intellect, dictates of reason. But like I said, for Plato, when you talk about reason, you are not talking about mere academic knowledge. You are also talking about knowledge that is infused with virtues that will make someone to lead a civilized, responsible life. So the issue now is going back to the quality of political leadership in Nigeria. Are Nigerians ready? Are Nigerians willing to ensure that philosopher kings are in charge of the political institutions, of the political decision making? And from what I could see, it is obvious that the masses of Nigerians and members of the ruling elite are not yet ready to take seriously the concept of ideal leadership embedded in the Platonic concept of the philosopher-king. To be a leader, there are certain intellectual, moral, and spiritual qualities that are necessary if leadership is to minister to the well-being of the masses. And where the ruling class, the leaders in every community lack these qualities, to that extent will that society experience degeneration and underdevelopment. So if Nigeria is to progress, we must begin to ensure that either the leaders, by providence, according to Plato, become philosophers, or we entrust the political leadership to those who have what I call philosophical wisdom. And this is the kind of thing Plato will prescribe.